Monday, everybody, and welcome back to the Big Things from the Big Story podcast. This week, you're back, Craig. I'm happy to have you.
Back after our surviving Easter extravaganza. Pretty close to apocalypse.
Oh, man, it was...
But extravaganza.
It was good. It was a really, really good weekend.
Very practical.
I think you're probably talking about yesterday. We spent some time out at Hope Harbor with the egg hunt, with the barbecue, with our glow groups from Blue Starr here. We had them out there at Hope Harbor, and it was just, we were talking about that as we got started.
Well, we had about 3,000 kids out there. I went out after everybody's gone. I thought, I'm going to find eggs.
Yeah.
Because kids. Hey,
No? You didn't find any?
None. I mean, I did the whole area. But we found a little bit of trash, but not as much as I thought there'd be. But yeah.
Well, I will say, I was going to check before I left, but in the teens area of the egg hunt, I know there was a significant egg that was hidden in the toolbox of the white square box Chevy out there. So
I didn't go up that far.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
It's, Jordan, if you're watching, your truck might have an Easter egg hidden.
Kevin, here's your chance, buddy.
That's the best one too. I don't know, but yeah, it was a great holiday weekend. We had a fantastic time here at Blue Starr, and of course, me and my family, we went camping over the weekend. So we tried to look as beautiful as we could coming in on Sunday morning, but we did get ready in the camper. And Craig, you came and visited us on Saturday.
It was and we took essentials with us.
Yes,
we brought the makings for s'mores. Yeah,
it was really the kids were very excited.
We had a classy one too. We had dark chocolate s'mores, which is
like the grown up version of it. So since you came and visited us on camping, do you have any? I know you have some Australia stories, but do you have any adventurous camping stories in your back pocket?
Oh, to me, my favorite place to ever camp is at like a Best Western, places like that in general,
with running water,
I know air conditioner works, and they serve you breakfast in the morning. You don't have to do a thing. You guys had to rub your sticks together and all that kind of stuff to make a fire, and
it wasn't quite that primitive.
Yeah, but we did a couple things. Tommy talked last time about going out in the outback.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And outback in Australia is about 60 miles in from the coast, and it's universal all around. And so, 80% of the country is outback, really. And sometimes that means really desolate, hot, terrible, and some very kind of scraggly little towns and stuff like that. We went into, trying to name of the town. It was like, can't think of it right now. But we went in, it was primarily an Aboriginal community, a lot of poverty. They took us out to the cemetery there, which is kind of a weird thing when you visit a community, but I've never done that before, but there's value to it. And we found over the last 20 years, the average life expectancy was in the mid-20s.
Oh, wow.
Drugs, violence, I can't say necessarily poverty, but it was just really rough. And this is not a camping thing, but I thought it was really, really interesting. We went into the little boys and girls club type of thing, and there's a group of boys in there, and boys being boys. There was probably about a 12-year-old boy, larger and angry, and there's a little fellow that he was picking on who just had enough. Yeah. And so next thing we know, we turn around and he's got a tennis racket or something. He's chasing that big boy around. We're like, okay, they'll stop any second now. I mean, we're 5 minutes into it. He is still hot in pursuit of this boy. And finally, one of the other boys, it was just interesting because he was probably right between the two boys' age. He grabbed both those boys, took them to a corner, and sat down with them. And then the war was over. Yeah. And I asked him, I said, I hate to pry.
What did you say?
But what did you say to calm him down? He said, we so need, this is a kid speaking, we so need to have visitors that come out here and visit our community and help us and bring meals and other things and all that. We can't have you making them afraid. You will toe the line or... we'll take you out back and we'll help you understand. Yeah. And I just thought that was really interesting. Just seeing the value of community at a young age, going, no. People already suspect that we're violent here. Let's not fulfill that.
Sure. Yeah.
And it was neat. And one of their favorite things to do in Australia is they have what's called sausage sizzles. Can I almost say that? Can we talk about S's and C's and all that?
Speech stuff.
Yeah.
Speech stuff is another one.
Yeah, it is. And so sausage sizzles. And one of the things, if you go to Australia, and I hope you do, anybody listening to this or in Australia, love you guys dearly, your sausages are terrible.
Oh, man.
I mean, they're bland. It's like... somebody warmed up a moist sponge inside the casing kind of thing. So, but they put a lot of great toppings on it, and that's what they really love. And their taste thing. So we did a sausage sizzle for these people, and I kept asking myself, "Are we really doing them a favor?" I don't know. So
that's funny.
Anyway, beautiful people, but the not Maori, that's New Zealand, but the Aboriginal population there, very wonderful people.
Yeah, that's awesome. I can think of one camping story because it did rain pretty heavily after you guys left on Saturday. Or Friday night. One of the nights it rained really heavily, and we were so grateful to have the camper. It's like we are dry, we are safe. But one time when I was a teenager, there is a young men's leadership, like father and son or father and, somebody you respect in the church in Montana. They do this every year down the Missouri River, and you kayak, you canoe, I guess it's a canoe trip. For a couple days. And so you're out there, you can't really hop back in the truck once you're 2 days down the river. And one night we're all staying in our tents and there's a storm of magnitude, just pouring rain, heavy. And I was in a tent with, I believe, 5 guys were total. And so we were in like a 6-man tent, and that thing was not staying up in the weather. So what we ended up doing was in the middle of the night, we had a guy on each wall holding the wall up, and one guy rotating outside, restaking, just making a circle around the tent. And finally, we gave up after a couple of hours of doing that, and we stacked into like a 3-man tent with the 6 of us, and we were cozy and warm, and it was nice.
Yeah, what was the Bible lesson you learned from that?
God is in control of the storms and the sunshine.
Is that like an Ecclesiastes? Was it 4? We're a strand of 3 rope.
Is not easily broken.
Yeah.
Well, we still were broken. We still tumbled. Well, all of that is fantastic stuff, but this week we are here for a purpose. It is April 6th, and we are talking about what we read in the one-year Bible this week. We covered March 30th through April 5th this week, looking in the Old Testament at the book of Deuteronomy, looked at chapter 13, verse 1, all the way through chapter 28, verse 68. And, of course, in the New Testament, looking at Luke chapter 8, verse 40 through 11, verse 36. We would love to hear you guys' comments and the things that you've read this week. We'd love to hear the feedback. We've got a Facebook group where you can leave some of those comments. That link will be down below. And, of course, the comment section down below is a great place to leave those, too. And also, if you're watching this on YouTube, a lot of people don't realize this, but this is a podcast, so you can listen to it or watch it on all those podcast places. So Spotify, Apple, Amazon, wherever you listen to podcasts, we should be there. So feel free and share it with your friends. You don't have to be a part of just the Blue Starr Church. We'd love to reach out and connect with more people, especially those who are reading the Word with us this year. We would love to do that. Well, hopping in, let's talk about the Old Testament first.
All right.
Go ahead and give us just a little recap of what we read here in Deuteronomy this week. In the Old Testament, continuing in the book of Deuteronomy, we picked up in chapter 13, where Moses warns the people of Israel yet again to guard themselves against false worship, to not be led astray even by prophets or family members or cities that they enter. Do not be led astray into following another false god, which if you've followed along in the story, you know, these humans are pretty good at doing sometimes.
Yeah.
As we move into chapter 14, Moses reminds them that they are a holy people. They are set apart by God. And over the next few chapters, he reminds them what it looks like to be those holy people, what those commands of God are. Some of those are having a regular time of taking care of special needs of people, sojourners, the Levites, the foreigners, the orphans, the widows. You know, I think we think a lot of times that that's a teaching in the New Testament exclusively, but God's been worried about people throughout all time.
Yep.
Again, another one is holding the Sabbath year, staying fast to that, forgiving debts, letting the land rest, and all of that. In Deuteronomy chapter 16, we get a reminder of what they're supposed to do for their festivals and their feasts, things like Passover, the Feast of Weeks, and the Feast of Booths or Tabernacles. In chapter 17 and 18, we again are reminded of the instructions for the different leaders like priests and prophets, what their jobs are to be. And we spend a good chunk of our reading this week in chapters 19 through 25 looking at the laws for justice and mercy in the community and all of the details with those laws. Again, Deuteronomy is a lot of recap of the law for a new generation. That's
kind of the definition of its name.
Yeah, it is the definition of its name. I said it last week. I can't remember what it breaks down to. It's like reiteration of the law.
Second telling.
Yeah. So, and it's like exactly what's happening in Deuteronomy.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. Well, maybe they named it after they wrote it.
Yeah, absolutely. We see things like the cities of refuge for those, accidental murderers, if you will. And we talked about that a few weeks back, of course, with the sanctuary cities. Proper family practices, business practices, all of that is in the law of God. In chapter 26, Israel is reminded to publicly remember God's deliverance from Egypt. In fact, it's really strong here in Deuteronomy because he's like, I'll take you back to Egypt if I have to. And I thought that was kind of funny.
My dad had a scene kind of like that.
Yeah, I brought you into this world, I'll take you out of it.
Pretty much.
Also, we have the first fruits offering, which I have bookmarked this week because I think that's really, really powerful. And in chapters 27 and 28, we see this law written on stones, and blessings and curses are proclaimed publicly, again, reinstating these laws of God. And in this last chapter, chapter 28 that we read this week, God reminds them what it'll look like if they're obedient to him. It'll look like blessing and favor and conquering their foes. But he also reminds them what it looks like if they're disobedient. It'll look like the opposite. It'll look like despair.
Wouldn't it just be great if that was the thing that kept us in our lane, was when you jump off, I always tease my wife about driving by Braille, 3 a.m., she's filling in, driving for me, and then I hear the, alongside of the road, It'd be great if it did that. Instead, he's required us to know him. Yeah. To keep us in the lane.
Absolutely. So that's kind of where we're at in Deuteronomy this week. Covered a good chunk of ground in the Old Testament this week, and a good recap of a lot of the law that we've read. Yeah. Well, Craig, talking about the Old Testament, was there anything that really stuck out to you this week in our reading?
Well, and it kind of jumped at me, and it's especially how it's worded, the curses. Mm-hmm. Because we have and we'll see in the second out of Ephesians 6, most of what we're used to responding to is just the instruction, have no other God before me and all that. But it's interesting that they talk about idolatry, but it's in the curse version. It's the idea of don't do it, and it would eventually, as we know, biblically, it would haunt them. It would carry them off into captivity, the idolatry that they practiced. And in understanding idolatry is a huge thing because we don't often equate what we're into and what we're all about and what we've staked our lives to and all that is idolatrous. Yeah, maybe a career, but it could even be aspects of church. Yeah, if it's not biblically sound and founded and all that as well, too. So.
I'll throw a big one, and hopefully this doesn't get, clipped and turned into a TikTok. But somebody said something to me one time about, can we even make an idol of the Bible? Yeah. And that really kind of got me like, well, no. We can. When we're not seeking after the heart of God and we're just using it to prove the things we think it proves, we can even make an idol of the Bible.
And we have to be careful. I had a man one time that was arguing one version over another with me. Yeah, sure. And we were at his kitchen table, and so I was trying to be a little diplomatic at least, and I finally told him, I said, if I showed you errors in your version, how would that affect you? And he said, I wouldn't know to trust anything anymore. I'd give up on God and this, that, and the other. I said, oh, wow. Conversation's over. I can't do that to you.
Yeah, I know.
No,
You're
it's
not going to stumble them.
I can't be so right that I can wrong you.
Yeah,
Wow. So anyway, the idea of dishonoring your father and your mother. What does that look like? Ephesians has a more positive way. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And it's a commandment with a promise.
Yeah,
and the promise is you're going to live a long time in the land, and so that goes back to I brought you into this world. I can take you right back out again. So I like the practicality. Some of the curses, like messing with landmarks. This the yard markers of where my property ends and yours begins, and all that. And people are always trying to get a little bit further, a little bit more land, but not pay for it. They just want to move the marker that goes with it. And but the real issue is, you really live a better life when you can trust your neighbors.
Yeah.
When integrity is part of the equation, and I'm not worried about those landmarks or anything like that.
Because trust is a big deal.
Yeah,
and I was having this conversation with somebody this week. My week just blends together. I don't even remember what it was, but talking about how all of these Old Testament laws, we read them and we're like, well, that's just the law, But now we can also, if we just take a step back, we can see some of God's reasoning, even though we didn't need to know his reasoning. But like some of the things, especially about health, right? Now we can realize we didn't even know what germs were until recent history, but yet God basically prescribed soap to them without us even knowing it was soap. And he prescribed, when you're bleeding, you leave your house and your city. And if you're, leprous and bleeding and you get it all over your house, you tear out the plaster, things that seemed extreme, but we can see now some of the reasoning behind it. And going back to your, moving the land markers, it's because we're building trust. We're an honest people. We're not dishonest in it. And it's powerful to see that.
But we live in a world where people are wanting to take, how many battles are fought over dirt.
Sure. Yeah.
And it usually doesn't work out well. We've had world empires and whatnot come and go. All they wanted was more dirt, and then somebody got bigger and badder and took it away from them.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, I just, you almost
you're
took
the
us
host.
there.
I back off.
I didn't talk about curses at all. I was looking at Craig's notes that he sent me just before we started. I'm like, oh yeah, he's got a lot about curses. I was thinking kind of the opposite way, because in the midst of all of this that you just talked about, God prescribes something that's already been mentioned in Numbers and before, but it's about giving back to God. And here in Deuteronomy, it's talked about as the first fruits. And I really like this idea of first fruits. So on April 4th, we read in Deuteronomy chapter 26, just the beginning of Deuteronomy chapter 26. And he's talking about when you enter into a new land, and God gives it to you as an inheritance, which is what they're doing as they enter into the promised land, right? When they enter into that promised land, they are supposed to take it over, take care of the land, and then what they receive from their harvest, they're supposed to take the first fruits and give it back as a dedication to the Lord, and give it to the priests, and let all the proper things be done with it. And there's all the law behind that. But I just thought of that as such a powerful reminder of what God wants from us because of how great he's treated us, right? And so they entered this new land. They were given this blessing, this inheritance, and God wants us to proudly recognize with our offering, if you will, what he's given us. And so I was just thinking about that, applying it to today. If you go to any church ever, you know that they pass a basket around or they've got boxes at the back. They want your money, right? But that's not about the church needing your money as much as it is an opportunity for you to recognize what God has blessed you with and give some of your first fruits back, even though we have it in a monetary sense today. And oftentimes I feel like we look at that as, well, what's left we'll give to the church instead of what comes first is that God has blessed me.
Well, I love the discussion about the harvest and leaving gleanings out there for the poor.
Oh, yeah.
And as you said earlier, God has always had a heart for the poor, for the widows and the orphans and all that. And what percentage was that? What was incalculable, because it was just as it fell out, this is what's left.
Yeah. And Courtney and I talked about that a lot this week because, God had specific instructions for the landowner, I guess you will, and for the people who could come and take, because basically his law was you can come and take anything from anybody's field for today. If you were hungry, you could feed yourself for today. You can't go, take a combine and harvest their whole field and pay for your year's rent, but you can go provide for your family. And that is an incredible perspective that we lose track of. I mean, built into their society and into God's law was feeding the one that needed fed.
Yeah.
And so that's just a good piece. Yeah. Well, anything else from the Old Testament? We're kind of breaking it up into Old Testament and New Testament this week. So
I think I'm ready to move.
Okay. Well, there's a lot of good stuff in the New Testament.
Oh, yeah. Recognizable passages. It just makes life a little easier. It's like, I know the story.
There's a lot of good stories in this week's reading.
Yeah.
Well, this week we read, of course, in Luke, and so I'm going to try and give you my best recap I can, starting here in chapter 8, verse 40, where we picked up this week. Right away, we see two powerful miracles that are kind of intertwined. The raising of Jairus' daughter, or Jairus, depending who you ask, from the dead, and the woman who's been suffering from bleeding for 12 years being healed just by simply touching the garment of Christ. In chapter 9, we see Jesus sending out the 12 disciples or apostles and giving them power to heal and cast out demons. We see the feeding of the 5,000. The story of the transfiguration is in chapter 9, where Jesus is revealed alongside Elijah and Moses. And Peter just has no idea what to do with that. It's like, let's build some houses, I guess.
This is a big day.
After that grand moment, we see Jesus going back and teaching, performing miracles. And at the end of chapter 9, he casts out a demon that the disciples couldn't, as well as he teaches about greatness, how greatness actually comes through humility. And he calls for a whole heart commitment from his followers. Take up your cross daily and follow me. In chapter 10, Jesus sends out the 72 disciples, and we see the story of the Good Samaritan. And verses 25 through 37 is where we see that. At the end of chapter 10, we see the story of Mary and Martha serving Jesus, and versus maybe serving versus listening and sitting at his feet. And so we have this dynamic between Mary and Martha and which one is actually more valuable. Jesus uses it as an opportunity to say that it is more important to be with him than be busy for him, if you can.
Yeah, there's a good lesson to be learned in the church by that as well.
Yes, absolutely. There's lots and lots of good stuff there for us. Okay, and of course, as we go into chapter 11, we see Jesus teaching an example of how to pray, something we often call the Lord's Prayer, or one of the versions of the Lord's Prayer is here. At the end of this week's reading, we see a few more teachings of Jesus, how he explains that a divided kingdom cannot stand and that you're either against him or for him. It's also interesting in Luke, we also get if they're not against us, they're for us. And so we kind of get that dynamic throughout the book.
It's a hard one for us to swallow.
Oh, it is. It is. And we read that one last week, and I didn't even get a chance to talk about it. It slipped my mind. And as we finish out this week, Jesus is sharing that true blessing comes from hearing and obeying God. And verses 33 through 36 of chapter 11, Jesus is talking about what you allow into your heart shapes your entire life. Talks about the lamp of the body and get some really good representation in verses 33 through 36.
It's like there's some kind of common, authorship in all this, that it fits with the Old Testament of blessings and cursings, and it all boils down to the heart.
Oh, yeah. And it ties right into what we read a while back in the Old Testament, that God, or man, looks at the outward appearance, but God looks at the heart. That comes from the Old Testament, even though it sounds like a teaching of Christ. Yeah, absolutely. Well, what are some things that you saw in the New Testament this week, right?
We were in a Glow group last night out at Hope Harbor, and I really appreciate the teachings. Fred Risendaler was a teacher, and it just seemed like it, you hang up on a phrase occasionally in one of these groups, and the one that we hung up on was, who is my neighbor? Why do we want to know? Well, there's really two reasons why we want to know who our neighbor is. We want to know exactly how far out we have to go. Right now, all this stuff going on in Iran and in Russia. Well, is that beyond our fence? I mean, is that not part of our purview or whatever?
I liked one specific word that I liked a lot of what Fred said last night, but I like one specific word he used because we don't use it enough, but this would be using it in a negative context. He said, we want to know where our boundary is.
Yeah.
Or the lawyer, the teacher of the law here wants to know, well, where's my boundary?
Yeah.
Where's my boundary? We want to know where that barrier is.
Yeah, and in the book, Boundaries, has set a lot of people realizing, hey, I can set boundaries and all that. And you should set some boundaries.
Yeah.
But when it comes to your love of your fellow man, there is no boundary to that. It's allowing things to affect you negatively. Put a boundary.
Yeah.
And that just is an allowance for yourself. But this idea of knowing how far I get to love somebody as well too. It may not occur to you in your daily prayers to pray for, kids in Russia, or Iran or Iraq or wherever it may be, or Tulsa,
Well, and we can read this story, and I think most people know this story by heart almost. But when you stop to think about the questions that he was asking us, like who is our neighbor that we avoid? Who is the Samaritan in our culture, in our lives? And sadly, the answer to that can be a lot of people. It's like the homeless guy on the corner. Do I always do the best thing in that situation? Yeah. The one that I said was, who's the Samaritan? I said, anybody with a past, because, we'll pick our past that's not acceptable for us to even connect with you. And there's just so many hard-hitting, life-changing questions when we put ourselves in the shoe of either the Samaritan who takes care, or, the ones that pass by.
Yeah. I find it interesting in viewers, if you find the one, I'm not sure there is one, but how many Samaritan stories end up with a bad Samaritan?
Yeah, okay.
When Jesus interacts in parables and whatnot about Samaritans, they're good people in it. The woman at the well, she goes out and tells everybody, I met a man who told me my life story. And they're like, she had, despite her irreputable, wrong word, but anyway, her bad reputation, if you will, in the community, they were willing to hear more about the fella she was talking about.
Yeah.
And so, if there is one, maybe you know one, but I don't know of any. Okay. And despite how the Jews often saw, I love the countercultural teaching of Jesus. Like, let me tell you a story. It involves a Samaritan. They're like, oh, goody, it's going to be, they're bad. No.
And Fred did a great job of kind of putting that in our perspective too, because we know that, but we need to recognize it. Like how poorly they were treated, how looked down upon by the regular Jew the Samaritans were, and he just did a really, really good job of that.
Yeah. And my other thing was in Luke 11 where he talks, his disciples say, hey, teach us to pray like John taught his disciples. And I like to think behind the scenes and all that kind of stuff. Jesus goes out in the wee morning hour, still dark, and he prays, talks to his Father. And how do they find him? There's no torch out there. Yeah. There's no porch light, and they can hear him. And I it kind of reminded me of my own parents, and that what if they walk up finding the voice, following the voice through the wilderness, and they come to the circle where Jesus is, and he mentions, and Father, bless Peter and help him, in his struggles and all that kind of stuff. How powerful it is to witness that your name is taken before the throne of God. And I love this idea of teaching folks to pray, because sometimes we just think it's osmosis.
Yeah,
we baptize somebody and like, okay.
You just get it.
And my experience was 2 days after I was baptized, I was asked to say opening prayer. Like, that's not very fair.
Well, and it's so refreshing to me. This is something that over the past few years I've noticed is how impactful the Lord's Prayer is to a new Christian. This is like, it's they can get up there and almost cite it, from heart. And it's like, why do we, who've been in the church not have this same passion for the Lord's Prayer, for this example prayer that Jesus gives? And I think it's really because, a new Christian's like, how do I pray?
Yeah.
And, Jesus told me here's a way how. And then they hit the things that we miss sometimes.
Yeah.
Like, our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. How holy you are. And sometimes we just forget we gloss right past the fact of God, how holy you are.
Yeah, dear Heavenly Father, we just launch and forget. Yeah.
Hey, God, Sue's sick again,
Yeah, we talked a little bit about there's so much to our prayer life that I don't think we really even touch the hem of the garment, pardon the pun, with our studies this week and all that. But there's so much more to the power and God's presence in our prayer life and all that kind of stuff. And so it is a worthwhile subject to really plow into.
Well, a solution, a prescription to maybe not hitting all the things that we are called to hit in prayer is kind of what Jesus teaches about pray without ceasing. If your life is always open to God, of course, take those moments to realize how holy He is and how He's providing for you and how He forgives you, so you should forgive others.
Can you do that with your eyes open? I mean, if you're going to be praying with...
if you're driving, you sure should, okay?
You should.
That's my rules for praying while driving. Please.
Maybe praying without ceasing, maybe it's more of an attitude that doesn't let you drift from God so far that prayer is beyond thought in that moment, but being in the mood to be with God at all times.
Yeah, what I'm realizing right now as we're recording this is we could have a whole side episode on prayer, and that would be really, really cool.
It would.
And so, but
vote on it.
Let us know in the comments if you'd like to hear something. But there's a lot of things that we should think about from this spurring on of Jesus, answering their question, because it's a question, right?
Teach us.
How do we pray?
Yeah.
And he gives an example. Is it the everything all in once? No, it's an example that we should follow. And so I think that's good. And
it's a good place to start, if nothing else, but don't let it stay there.
Yeah.
There's so much more.
Yeah. Well, I just thought the reading from Luke was so good this week. Of course, we've got this section where the disciples ask how to pray, but also just at the beginning of our week, we talked about the miracles of Yairus' daughter, and just the incredible faith there, and that she's not sleeping, she's awake, and it's just incredible there. And of course, intertwined in the midst of that story is this woman who touches Jesus in the crowd, and Jesus recognizes and
touch me.
The power, it's like that's crazy for me to think, but her humility in there, she just wanted to, because she believed just touching him would heal her, and those stories both make me think of how much trust we put in Jesus. Do we have faith that just a little bit of Christ working in my life in this way will guide me, will save me, will take me? And sometimes we forget that. Yeah. And so I've taken us all the way back to where we started this week in Luke. That was some of my favorite stuff. The Samaritan, the Lord's Prayer, all of it. Good stuff in Luke this week.
Yeah, very relational, very relatable as well too.
Absolutely.
Don't over, religious it. New phrase for the week.
Over religious it. Hey, it works.
So, make it relational. Yeah. How do I have that wonderful? Despite her tragedies, despite her losses, that woman, I just got to touch the hem.
Yeah, I just need a little Jesus.
Yeah.
Need a little Jesus.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Well, Craig, thank you for being on this week. And of course,
a privilege.
Everybody, we want to hear. I know that the comments have kind of died down, and we kind of settled into the year now.
We're not new anymore.
Yeah, we're not new. We're not fresh. We know, we come out every Monday. But, leave a comment. Join our Facebook group. It's Reading the 1 Year Bible Together. Yeah. Leave your comments and, post the things that you're seeing. There is no wrong answer. Yeah. And if there is, it'll disappear. There you go.
Well, I like the idea of let them post their experiences with the simplicity of the interactions with God. And because it can really inspire somebody else.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Inspire somebody else in the comments section. That'd be great. Well, I want to leave us with a little bit of wisdom that we read this week. Okay. On April 2nd, we read in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 11, and it's a simple one, but I think it's a really good one. Whoever works his land will have plenty of bread, but he who follows worthless pursuits lacks sense.
There you go.
And that applies to our life to this very day. Work diligently and don't pursue worthless things.
Yeah, amen. To God be the glory.
Absolutely.
Good stuff.
Well, Craig, thank you so much for being back. I appreciate that you are my steady and my regular, and I just love having you here.
Honored. This is my first podcasting experience, and so it's been wonderful to be invited to be part of your lives as well too. It's a blessing. It really is.
You're going to be a pro. You got a whole year under your belt, a year-long podcast by the time we're done with this. There you go. All right, guys. Well, until next week, we love having you. We love hearing your comments, but we'd love to see you again right here on the Big Things from the Big Story podcast.
Have a blessed week. God bless you.